After leaving Lander, it became obvious we were also leaving the basin. Trees started to thicken and we started hearing our first rumors about grizzlies in camp. We ran into our friend Monk for the first time in a while at our first campsite and enjoyed dinner 100 yards from our tent. On theme with this entire through hike, our 100th day on the CDT brought challenges. The last 3 miles or so of trail have been pretty covered in blowdowns. We knew the Cirque of the Towers alternate had some pretty gnarly blowdowns, but it's one thing to hear about them and another to experience them. We weaved in and out of trees, scraping by and hoping we didn't lose anything out of our packs as we pushed through. Once on the other side, we started to get glimpses of the beauty of the Wind River Range. Trail was not immediately obvious, but knowing we had to go up and over an unnamed saddle meant we could roughly follow the correct route. At Kid's behest, we ascended the saddle as the sun was setting and made our way down to Tin Cup Lake amid swarming mosquitoes and some of the most beautiful views on trail yet. After visiting the CDT section of the Wind River Range in 2020, I had been anxious to return, and this night was an excellent foreshadowing of what the week ahead would hold. With 7 days of food, we were ready to skip the town of Pinedale and spend an extended amount of time fully immersed in granite peaks, alpine lakes, and flowing streams. After a relaxing morning soaking in the last of our incredible campsite, we began our descent to Big Sandy Lake. On the way down, nature called, and I found a porcupine during my search for some privacy. It's been absolutely stunning. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of in a bummer mood about this hike after the basin. Not really looking forward to hiking anymore, but I knew if I could just get to the winds that I would hopefully start enjoying myself again, and that's definitely been the case. We should have a really gorgeous day ahead of us today. We'll have Jackass and Texas Pass and Lonesome Lake in between. We are going a little slower than we hoped, but hopefully after the Cirque we can do a few bigger days to kind of make up for stopping a little early last night and not doing a big day out of town. Once we made it to Big Sandy, it was time to climb again and make our way up Jackass Pass into some familiar territory. My anticipation for the Cirque of the Towers made the climb feel easier than it was, and when we made it close to the top of the pass, we decided to take the climber's route to change things up from the last time we'd done it. The climber's route required route finding and all 4 limbs to make our way between giant granite boulders. After navigating through the huge rocks, we found trail again below Pangora Peak and made our way down to Lonesome Lake for lunch. While we ate, I lamented that we couldn't camp here and looked at the clouds coming in over Texas Pass with apprehension. Texas Pass is a short but incredibly steep climb. As I huffed and puffed and pushed myself up, the sky grew increasingly more gray. When I reached the top, it began to hail. Perfect timing. I knew the descent was steep and loose, and I wasn't looking forward to doing it while wet, so I took my time. At the bottom, thunder began to boom, and I was grateful to not still be at the top. As the afternoon went on, the storm worsened. It alternated between pouring rain and spitting hail, while the clouds made some of the scariest and loudest noises I've ever heard. We kept expecting the storm to break, but it never did. Eventually, we were soaked through and forced to set up camp. This is through hiking. It's kind of gnarly out there.
So fun.
It's only we got in the tent at 5:30. And
6:45 now.
Yeah, it's been, and we hiked in this for 2 hours at least.
Yeah.
Since we came down Texas Pass.
6 miles.
It's fun. You should do it. Two hours later, the storm finally broke, and we had a small fire with dinner.
Everything was soaked from the storm, and despite wanting to make it out of camp quickly, it took some time to work ourselves up to putting on clothes, socks, and shoes that were completely soaked through. Once we got packed up, we were able to move into the sun and warm up. We even stopped for an early lunch to dry all of our gear and hang out with Monk, Special K, and Anvil.
This is our 4th day in the winds. Yesterday was gorgeous, and then some clouds started to come in. Get to the top of Texas Pass and it starts hailing on me. Came down and then it rained on and off for a little while, and then it just started really raining and hailing consistently. And after a few hours of that, Kid and I were both freezing. So we figured, and like all our rain gear soaked through and everything. So we figured we should probably set up camp to try and get out of the weather and try and warm up. So we did that at like 5, and it kept raining until like 7:30 or something. We probably made the right choice, even though we only got 13 miles in because of it. And then it was super clear overnight, and it's been beautiful all day today. And we're hoping we get the same weather tomorrow for Knapsack. Weeks like this are why I thru-hike. I just need to remember them when it's terrible.
The rest of the day was beautiful, a welcome contrast from the weather the day before, and we climbed Hat Pass before camp, hopeful that the good weather would continue for the next day. Having hiked multiple shorter days in a row, Kid and I had accepted that we were likely going to run out of food, but I didn't want to give up a tempting knapsack call. It was a route-finding alternate that would be more challenging than the traditional CDT, but also was said to be breathtakingly beautiful. Our plan shifted to either bailing out at Green River Lakes or potentially lifting some extra food off weekend backpackers who had packed too much. I climbed up and over Lester Pass alone, drinking in the beauty and fresh mountain stream water of the Wind River Range. Kid hiked ahead to attempt to repair a hole in his sleeping pad and stopped at a lake to meet me for lunch.
Alright, it's our 5th day in the winds. We're going a little slower than we thought. We still probably got 2 days until Green River Lakes, and then another 40 miles after that to Dubois. We might bail out at Green River Lakes to Pinedale unless we can get some food from someone somehow. I just passed 2 people who are going south, and they said Kid had a surprise for me from them. So I'm wondering if maybe they gave us food, and if not, some sort of treat. Either way, I'm excited to find out what that is.
When I caught Kid at lunch, he had repaired his pad, and it turns out the nice folks who were bailing off the high route gave us a bunch of their extra food, even including some mountain houses. We now had enough food to hike through to Dubois and didn't have to worry about getting up and over Knapsack Call that evening. We decided to take our time hiking into Titcomb Basin and seeking out the best campsite possible. I went for a swim in Titcomb Lake, something I don't get to do nearly enough on thru hikes despite being a self-proclaimed connoisseur of alpine dips. But as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to make time for a swim. After 5 days in the backcountry, there is nothing quite like immersing yourself in pure glacial melt to make you really feel alive. If you ever get the chance, I beg you, don't pass it up. We spent the evening relaxing and fending off mosquitoes while discussing our route plans for Knapsack Call. I was looking forward to testing my limits on this trail once again, and this time in stunning scenery. We woke up early, knowing going over the call would take us several hours despite only being 3 miles from the top. Almost immediately, the trail disappeared and we began using the granite towers as waypoints. Kid and I disagreed about which way to go, and I opted to follow the remains of Twin Glacier while he took a more direct route. I was in search of glacial caves, and while some of them had collapsed, I was still rewarded for my efforts. At the end of a long snowfield, Kid and I rejoined routes and made our way up a steep boulder field, mostly using our hands and feet to climb up to the top of the call. Having a backpack on certainly made it more challenging, but I was grateful to no longer have 8 days of food.
Can't even see where we came up because it was so steep.
The top did not disappoint, and despite our disagreements, I was thrilled Kit and I had chose to come this way. The challenge wasn't over yet though, as the descent still lay before us. Though it was supposed to be easier than the ascent, the rock was loose and there was still not a single defined route. Eventually, we made our way back to vegetation and the wildflowers lined our path once again. We made our way to Peak Lake and over a scree field that looked impassable until we were actually on it. Before we found our way, I thought we might have to swim. The last time I'd visited Peak Lake, I'd come from the other direction, and it still lives in my mind as one of the most incredible views I've ever seen. Nothing I can film will ever do being there in person any justice. After a late lunch, we made our way over Cube Rock Pass and descended parallel to the Green River for the rest of the evening. We stopped for dinner and the mosquitoes did too. We eventually resorted to pacing while eating as the most effective way to keep them away. We hiked into the night and set up camp just a few miles from Green River Lake's trailhead. In the morning, we opted for the route on the west side of the lake, which turned out to have a bunch of PUDs, pointless ups and downs, which put me in a mood. But all was better when we reached the campground and pit toilets. We had breakfast at the parking lot, and it felt like a huge accomplishment, knowing we weren't going to have to hitch from there as we ate one of our gifted mountain house breakfasts. Kid even talked a section hiker into taking some of our trash. After the parking lot, we started climbing and met our first Sobo, Dingo, who gifted us some snacks to get us through the next 2 days. The trail returned to one of its most common states, nondescript cow country scenery, and thunder chased me up and over Gunsight Pass. When I caught Kid at camp, we hung our food and made plans for the next day. We awoke to elks bugling with plans to make it all the way to a yurt that night. We walked along shadeless roads with views of the Tetons in the distance.
But yeah, it's been just a long stretch and we're kind of out of the winds now and just kind of in this open country between the winds and Yellowstone. And it's pretty in its own way. There's trees still, just not really over the trail. Hasn't been too bad. But I am just like so ready for a town and a shower and food, and I think honestly I'm just getting a little burnt out with this hike. The winds were amazing and they re-energized me a lot, but then, you know, one day back into like this long kind of, I don't want to say boring, but kind of boring walking through cow country, and I just kind of feel like why does this need to be done as a 5-month thing of continuous hiking? Like, I'd rather just kind of pick highlights, and that sounds, it's like kind of antithetical to the nature of through hiking. I'm feeling a little burnt out, I think. Hopefully town changes that and I start to feel better about it, because we still got 2 months and it's gonna be a long 2 months if I'm not excited about it.
The days seemed to drag on, and I was starting to feel desperate for town. 9 days is the longest I've ever been in the backcountry, and the lack of showers and town food was starting to take its toll. There was a rumored aggressive grizzly in the area, and route finding became challenging, which kept me on edge most of the afternoon. Then, of course, it started to rain. After what felt like the longest hike of my life, I arrived at the yurt where Kid was already stoking the wood-burning stove. With just under 3 miles to town, we got to the road nice and early, but the hitch proved to be difficult. After a while, a man in a truck offered to come back for us if we were still there in an hour. When the pickup truck driver came back from the other direction, he kept his word and we piled in. He turned out to be the owner of the yurt, and tons of sled dogs. He kept us entertained with stories of thru hikers he'd met the whole way to town.
How do you feel? You hear that, everybody? That's the sound of hail for like 3 hours non-stop.